My name is Allison Felis, and this is I'll Follow You, a podcast featuring light and lively conversations about film, music, and creative culture, coming to you from the People's Republic of Rogers Park on the far northeast side of Chicago. So, I've been hesitant to talk too much on this podcast about the coronavirus situation. Sure, I've alluded to it here and there over the past few weeks, mostly just in my initial greetings to my guests, checking in on how everyone's doing. But my strength as a writer and a thinker has never really been of-the-moment analysis of current events, and there's obviously way more than enough punditry floating around in the ether right now. But as so many of us are about to head into our second full month of sheltering in place, it also felt unrealistic to not acknowledge this new reality that we're all living through right now. So, in my attempt to bridge the gap between not wanting to add to the noise about the topic, but then also not wanting to ignore its presence in our lives either, I thought that a conversation with my brilliant friend, Erin the Psychic Witch, might be unique and helpful. Erin is a gifted psychic teacher and healer with 2 decades of experience in the healing arts. With a substantial and wide-ranging background in bodywork, natural skincare, holistic and functional nutrition models, energy healing, and psychic development, she brings physical and energetic modalities together to create a practical path toward healing. Her work is nothing less than facilitating the healing, liberation, and multidimensional maturation of all beings with the ultimate goal of full creative expression. She teaches and offers various containers for healing work online through her website, erinthepsychicwitch.com. Today, we're digging deep to discuss deprogramming from the go, the exciting aspects of the failure of our leadership, connecting to our bodies by preparing food for ourselves, facing our collective addiction to struggle, why creative solutions can't move through our space if we're constantly in doing mode, and why people who say, "Don't give in to the fear," don't know what the fuck they're talking about. And now, I'm so pleased to offer you my conversation with Erin the Psychic Witch. So hi, Erin. Thank you so much for being willing to be on the show and chat with me today.
Hi, I'm so excited.
Coming to me live from Portland.
Yeah, just a little bit south of Portland, actually. I'm on a farm called Two Rivers Farm. That's about, I think exactly 40 minutes from downtown Portland.
Well, and some of the photos that I've seen you put up of just the landscape looks just so gorgeous and just nourishing and beautiful.
Oh, God, it's so stunning here. It's crazy.
So before we, get into deeper conversations and topics at hand of the day, do you want to just sort of give a little thumbnail sketch of who you are and what you do?
Yeah. So my name is Erin. I work online primarily as a psychic teacher. And that was a project that I took on about 5 years ago, where I really wanted to take everything I learned from my years of bodywork training, my years spent in nutrition trainings and mental health trainings and psychology type trainings and self-help tools, and then most especially psychic schools, and bring those tools to people in a way that they could access them online, and also alongside of that make it very somatic, which has been a very fun challenge the past 5 years, to take very cerebral mental self-help tools and bring them into a more somatic experience for people. So that's been my fun challenge, and I've succeeded a bit in it. And so I teach classes, I teach training programs, and I work one-on-one in my practice with folks who really just kind of want to bring all of the parts and pieces of what they've been learning together into a place where they can figure out how they all fit together and answer some questions for themselves and put some pieces together that maybe they couldn't before. My typical client gets everything, but it's not quite working yet. So that's my job, is like that tune up at the end.
That's amazing. And because I think that, I would just love to, hear you sort of unpack like what psychic is, because I sort of feel like a lot of times people, hear psychic and they think fortune teller, or they think, sort of predicting the future. And it's hard for me sometimes, like in just a quick conversation, to really be like, no, that's not what it is, but I feel like since this is like your bread and butter, like you probably have like a much more easy way to define what that is for people.
God, you would think, but the term brings up so much, and then the concept and the actual lived experience of it is also different for so many people. For me, it is about being multidimensionally awake, aware, and present. So my ability to be in each one of my bodies, be it the mental body, the emotional body, the physical body, the spiritual body, the whatever, astral body, the emotional body, to be able to be stationed in each one of my centers while also being able to be a good human in the world. So that's my work on a regular basis, is that integration piece and making that a comfortable thing for myself first, and then people as well. And that to me is what psychic means. It's a multi-dimensional focus. It's a path of mastery, and it certainly is about knowledge and information and seeing clearly and really expressing fully in a lifetime, which feels like the term that I like to use is full creative expression. Just the ability to be fully creatively expressed in a lifetime, I think, is what the benefit of being psychic nets us.
I love that. Oh, that's so good. Because like, when I first started, doing psychic work, there was the sort of like needy, codependent part of me that was like, oh yeah, I'm going to be psychic so that I can help people, and that's true. And that happens, and that can be present in giving a reading or just, whatever, giving a healing. But yeah, just you only have to do this work for slightly longer than a weekend workshop, to sort of realize that, oh, this is about me. This is not about anybody else. And I love the way that, you say it's bringing together that multidimensional sense of yourself.
Absolutely. You and I talked a little bit before this about how important it is to do this work for yourself. And I was sharing how I am the number one student of this work. And that is probably the most uncomfortable thing about using the word psychic in the world, is that people then have all of this, the connotation of the word psychic and this idea of hierarchical sort of spiritual knowing. And that's actually my most challenging lesson that I teach people, meaning like their faces get all funky when I say it. I'm just like, listen, I am human. I am the number one student of this practice, and you're going to see me working through my practice right alongside you. I'm having awakenings, I'm having ahas, I'm having holy shits, I'm having all of these things just like you are. We are similar. I've just been trained to hold a really safe space. I trained for 7 years to be a good psychic and then a good psychic teacher. So it doesn't come from nowhere. It wasn't something I just dreamed up. It was definitely something I trained for multidimensionally, again, for many, many years. But there is such a humbling quality to it that you're always working on yourself at the same time.
Well, because I think that's like something that, in sort of Instagram age, you see someone take like, a training for 6 months or whatever, and that's great. And that can be a cool awakening to have. But then the idea that you're somehow ready to go out and to like dig into other people's sort of emotional and spiritual bodies, it's kind of like, oh geez, so I love that, you're like, no, I take this really seriously, and I did this for years and years and years before I could bring forward the richness that you're able to bring forward now.
Yeah. And I think that's the benefit of being with a professional who makes it look easy. that's just kind of how it is in any situation. If they're making it look easy, it's probably because they spent a couple of decades learning how to make it look easy.
Right, right. So I really, I don't want to make this sort of like the coronavirus special, but I sort of feel like everything is so weird right now. And it was weird when it started, and it's like feels almost more weird now that it's like a month into whatever this is as it's happening in the United States.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I just sort of felt like it would be cool to talk to you about just what's happening, the energy of what's happening, the energy of how people can sort of use this time,
Yeah.
or separate out from the weirdness of this time, because there's just such a lot going on, and I feel like obviously like our our authority figures are largely failing us. I mean, not everyone. I mean, there are some people speaking wisdom, but like, yeah, there's so much opportunity for people, especially as we're sort of quote unquote isolated in our own houses, to take this as an opportunity to really explore what's being brought up by these current circumstances. So yeah, I would just love to talk about sort of like just the embodiment of it, and like I said, being solo in our own spaces and sort of what that's bringing up for people.
Well, it's bringing up everything. I don't even know where to begin with it. It's so exciting and scary, and it's like I'm watching everybody go through what my psychic students and my psychic friends have been present with for years. And that's really exciting because it means people are waking up. When you have to face yourself, when you go home to your home where all of your stuff is, where your chosen relationships are, where your family is, friends are, no matter what type of circumstance, even just where your cat is or where your couch is or where your housemates are, you're having to face whatever dynamics that are there. And oftentimes, because of our culture, there's this idea that the external production of things and the busyness of life, and we just got to handle what's next, what's next, what's next. It has a way of keeping you from those more subtle voices and those subtle urges and those subtle knowings that now no one has a choice but to listen to. And that is very ugly for some people. I really want to honor that this is an extremely uncomfortable time. But part of the reason that it is an extremely uncomfortable time is because most of the way that we work ourselves as a culture has been anti-nourishing. And so I'm excited, kind of in a perverted way, because I'm seeing people actually have to do the work that I've been teaching for years and years, and that a lot of other healers have been teaching for years and years. We are brainwashed as a culture. There are these certain ways in which we are brainwashed, and we need to see that in order to step out of it. Now, that is incredibly uncomfortable, to have your mind going in this one direction and then to have to stop and really look at yourself and go inward and see what's there. It's not a fun process. I would equate it to a psychotic break. And so I don't want to negate anyone's suffering right now, because that would be wrong. But if I'm being honest, I am so excited because people are in their houses facing themselves, and I know, and they can't do anything. There's no distractions. There's no sports. There's the internet, but even everything on the internet is kind of about this right now. There is no way to get away from ourselves. We've got to slow down and do this work of deprogramming from the go, 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 because we have a capitalist global system. Not across the board, but pretty much across the board. Everybody's operating on this capitalist system, which is about taking from one thing, kind of raping this one thing until it can't be taken from any longer, to give people a cheap, easy solution to things. That's got to stop. And I'm excited because I know the only way for these large scale programmings to end is for people to do what I've seen every single human who's awakened have to do, which is lay down on the floor and die. It's lay in their bed and take naps in the afternoon. It is completely die to the experience of the extremeness of the awakening process. And there have been those of us who have been forced into that role and forced into the awakening process. I know if you're listening to a podcast like this, you might be one of those people. You had an awakening and you just couldn't play the game of life the same way any longer. That's what's happening globally right now. And it's really, really exciting. The other thing that's exciting about it is people are starting to understand that they need to make work accessible and work like life accessible in a very different way. There are so many people that can be doing their work from home, doing their work remotely. There are so many disabled folks and people who have not been in the workforce before that can absolutely be doing something with their life that would be super satisfying to them and be paid for it. You know, there's all of these ways in which innovation and accessibility are now coming to the forefront because we have to. And everything people are learning is what I've been pushing my clients, my students, my peeps to do over the past, 5 years in this project, but way longer as a body worker, way, way longer of like, listen, you got to slow down. You cannot think that everything at your work needs to be happening today and right now and all the time. You need to get into your body. You need to look at your family. You need to clean out your closet. You need to like get with your life in this way. Where are you coming from? And I see everybody starting to do that. And I know that, again, I just really want to honor things like domestic violence, stuff like that is up. Abuse between family members is up. This stuff is not without complexity and it's not without some bad stuff happening. But overall, being able to see things as they are, really taking a sober look at your life is the only way to awaken and change. And we have such an opportunity to do it now.
Yeah, and I totally feel that because it's, you know, I mean, we were sort of joking before that, like, as empaths, it's been sort of like great to like get people out of our spaces, like, you know, with people, you know, with the social distancing and the 6 feet apart and the masks and stuff like that. Like, but also so that's like sort of the external thing that's happening. But like internally, I mean, yeah, there's this whole world that gets opened up. Yeah, when you're just home and when you're sort of like with yourself and when you're, yeah, like you said, cleaning out your closets, like literally like the space that creates.
It's massive energy.
Yeah. So it's such an exciting time. You know, again, caveats being that, of course, financially it's hard for people and the,
it's scary. Yeah.
And it's scary. Yeah.
It's really scary. And just to two of your points that I wanted to bring up. One was the leadership. You know, people are really starting to understand that there aren't any gods or masters. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not that there's no God. It's just that no one's lording over you. I think that's the most exciting thing about our leadership failing to the point that they're failing, is that we're starting to see that we're all just humans, that if there is a healing of Trump, that would be it. We're all just humans, and you can't project your parental authority issues onto our government anymore. They're just failing left, right, and center. There is no mastery there. You know, like there's no one above you. You really do have to organize as a community. You really do have to, if you don't like the way something is done, you know, think about shifting and being an alderman. Think about being in government. Think about writing your senator, even if you don't want to do something as big as shifting your life and being in government, which a lot of us do. But most people can just write their senators and be like, listen, I don't like this and I don't like that. Getting involved in the leadership process is how democracy works. And it's how we, as not even just democracy, any sort of governmental system, we have to do it together. There can't be these people who are in charge and then the majority of the people that just want to like go to work, go home, and not be engaged. Like, that just doesn't work anymore. You have to be the leader of your life, and you have to take up space in your community in that way, no matter what type of personality you have. It's just what we have to do now.
Yeah, because the healing that this is bringing up on like a local level, I mean, just, I just recently finally like signed up for like my alderperson's like, email, newsletter that they put out. And it's
Yeah.
like, oh, right, like being centered like in this specific space that I'm in,
Yeah.
that like I go out for a walk and like the mile walk that I take, outside my front door, it's like, this is where I live. Like, this is my locality. And like, that's the important thing to sort of like tune into.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's genius. It's making everyone get very local. It's making us think about how we get our goods and services and how we could absolutely be growing food and not bringing in things, but being in a more regenerative cycle in our communities. And that's super exciting.
Well, and food. So, okay, I'm so glad you said food, because that's another thing that you have so much wisdom around, like with your psychic nutrition project.
Yeah.
Like, just looking at, I mean, the jokes that people have been making about like, oh yeah, like getting my sourdough starter, like going, online. But it's like this whole situation that's happening with people cooking for themselves, like is really fascinating.
I know. It's like everything I've been teaching forever and ever and ever is now something that's just normal. And I am just so excited about it. Yeah. I mean, if you want to connect to your body, if you want to connect to the earth, if you want to get present with your human form, you absolutely must make food for yourself. And you have to look at how you got that food onto your table. And you have to make decisions about what that means to you, and I think that it's really exciting to see people going back to these self-sufficient, very human times in history. Our grandmothers all made bread. They all knew how to do this stuff. And it wasn't until, the industrial, the post-war sort of individualization, everybody gets in their own house and has their own individual, this, that, and the other thing. There's just such an excess when we're not sharing. There's such an excess when we're not thinking about food and community and that whole life cycle. We've been so disconnected from it. And if you're born in the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, you were handed everything in a cellophane package. For very, very few people were they connected to the life cycle of something. And now folks cooking for themselves and feeding themselves and thinking about, should we have a garden? We could make a garden. We could at least do herbs. It would save us money. Then the supply chain wouldn't be so heavy. It's just everything people are supposed to be doing.
And it's been really cute to like sort of see people being like, oh, like, yeah, like I can peel this cucumber on my own, Yeah,
I can cut it. I actually have the time to cut it and peel it and add the vinegar and do my great grandmother's recipe. And that has a way of connecting you to your tribal roots, which we've definitely lost as white people. And this disconnection between everything with things like capitalism and hierarchies and supremacies and all of this stuff. Like, we need to connect back to the way we used to do stuff. Of course, we're going to continue to need to distribute things in larger contexts. Thank you, Amazon and Jeff Bezos. Tongue-in-cheek thinking. But, our distribution is there worldwide. And we can continue to hone it. But I think in addition to living a lot more locally and learning how to do that. Also, if you want to connect with your body on an emotional level, if you've had eating disorders in the past, or you have a disconnection from your body, or you've been just using it as a vessel to do whatever, if you want to connect in a deeper way, there is no better way than feeding yourself food. You can't get that from Thai takeout. You just can't. And I love Thai takeout and I have it too. But learning how to cook yourself a meal and doing it 3 meals a day, 7 days a week, you will feel different in your body.
Well, and I love too, like when you make a point on social media of putting up a photo of food and when you label it abundance, like, thank you for this abundance. And like, I just feel like that's so radical, to yeah, it's connected to that embodiment that we've been talking about, but also just being real about like what abundance is, this
Yeah.
lie of capitalism or whatever people think their
Yeah.
riches are, it's like I have the means to eat this food, and what abundance that is.
I gotta say, I've worked in 5-star, 5-diamond hotels. I started out my bodywork career for most of my 20s working in those worlds, and I have a lot of clients, or I had a lot of clients who were very well off, lots of material wealth, lots of social success, what I would call social success. Those people were coming to me because they were desperate to connect with their bodies again, and they really could not do it. The more houses they had, the more complexity they had in their lives, the more they spread out, the less comfortable, grounded, and able to be with themselves they were. And of course, again, that is not across the board. I had a lot of really incredible people. Everybody I had on my table was incredible. I'm not saying that they weren't. I'm saying that I noticed a trend with the more money they had and the more things they had, the less they could connect to their bodies and the earth in this way. And the more they were kind of running around stressed out trying to manage everything. So this idea that people are going back to their homes and Marie Kondoing, which was a thing that flared up in the collective over the last couple of years, like getting more minimalist about things, letting go of the excesses, that is the fallout from this rampant capitalism that we've certainly experienced in this country, the United States. We're getting more clear about these underlying emotional issues that we have, these mental health issues that we have, that in a large part, they're because of this system. And that's what I've been trying to tell people. You are not deficient. The systems and structures that are in place on this planet do not support your humanity. That's why you're being driven crazy. That's why you can't seem to figure out what's going on. That's why you're self-harming. That's why your mental health is tanked. That's why you can't heal. That's why financially you can't get ahead. It's not because there's something wrong with you. It's because these systems and structures that are in place need to fall down. And this COVID-19 is the way that it happens. Everything is halted. Nobody has a choice anymore. And that is very interesting. What's coming out of it is what I've been asking people to do, supporting people in doing for decades. And I know every other healer that I'm connected to, and that is by the hundreds of thousands I'm connected to healers, they're all saying the same thing too.
Well, and I find it interesting that like there is still that attempt to control this through, the people who are doing the food hoarding, and stuff like that, where it's like this just incredibly dysfunctional clinging to how people are trying to feel safe through this,
Yeah.
and it's like that's not actually it, and it's yeah, I'm not sure what's next, but it sort of feels like what's the next wave after people, after a month have been sitting in their houses and they're realizing like, oh, the stockpile didn't make me feel any safer,
Yeah. Well, I think that's what they get to explore, is seeing that that much toilet paper has not meant that they necessarily feel safer, or it means that they do feel safer, and now they can write their governor and be like, hey, I want you to do this for us or do that for us. We have a small business. I'm sure everybody that's been listening to this podcast, and me included, have been advocating AF to every company that I have, every credit card company, every, loan, every small business thing, I've been just calling all these companies and figuring out what they're giving us. We're working together to try to sustain and grow during this time. And so, hopefully their stockpile of toilet paper is empowering for them. But if they're finding that it's not, I'm hoping that they're going deeper and figuring it out. And I just, at this point, I don't even think I need to hope, because it's just happening. It's global. I don't know. We've never experienced something like this ever. Pandemics happen, they do happen. They've even happened in our lifetime. MERS and SARS and stuff like that has happened. But the change in the West has never fully occurred like this. So I can only imagine that we're going to emerge from this much more connected to ourselves and much more clear about what does make us safe and what doesn't make us safe, what does work and what doesn't work.
So for people who are feeling like stirred up and not settled in yet, like what is that about? Like what would you sort of I hesitate to say recommend. I mean, I don't want to put you in a position of like recommending what people should do, but like, what space are sort of people neglecting to look at if they're really feeling like, holy shit, like I'm holding down a job, I'm teaching my kid, I'm trying to cook 3 meals a day, and my partner's not pulling their weight, or whatever it is. Like, what's missing? Like, what's gonna help people sort of like move through that?
Well, the thing that I've been seeing people succeeding with when they get to that point is just to abandon the concept that they can keep it going. You can't. There's no way that you can now be a teacher. And I know this from my stepchildren. I, like every single person who has a child at home, was trying to be the teacher for the week. And I finally realized that this is one of the ways that I've been hanging on to. Now I let them, we have lessons, we have things that we keep up on, but I'm not going to fight them. If the way that they want to learn is by, going outside and building something, well, then that's the way they're going to learn that day. They will figure out math. They will learn how to write and read. And I don't need to create a bad relationship with them or be like some tyrant lording over my life. And it's the same thing with work. I, just like everybody else, have extra burdens on me right now as a small business owner. Like I said, I spend half of my time during the day just negotiating how to keep my business running during this time. And I've had to give up that things need to look a certain way. They just don't. So you let the kids unschool themselves. You just watch them actually see what they're drawn to. And the same with you as a person. See what you're actually drawn to doing. It's when people try to keep the machine going in their space that they lose their minds. You have to actually let go and just understand that this is not business as usual, and you will never go back to business as usual. And I don't think people quite realize that yet. And when they're gripping really hard or trying to accomplish everything, at a certain point, you have to let go. And that's the awakening process. That's always the beginning of the awakening process, when you just go, I can't do this anymore, because you finally are available to listen to your body. You're finally available to hear what the inner voice inside of yourself is saying, which is stop. This isn't sustainable. This isn't regenerative, even more than sustainable. It's not a regenerative cycle. This isn't giving anything. And so when you reach that breaking point is really the awakening process. And that's very scary for people. But as a teacher of the awakening process, there's no getting out of it. The way you can lessen the fallout of something like that is by simply listening and go, okay, I give up. I give in. Please, higher self, God, body, voice in my head, whatever you want to call it, go ahead. Tell me what I should be doing, because I'm not doing this well myself. This doesn't feel good. And when you give it up, I mean, Christians will tell you this all over the place. There's a saying, let go and let God. And that is absolutely true. You have to be willing to let go of the things that aren't working. And for people who are being super duper tortured right now, they're having a hard time letting go of it for practical reasons, but also for emotional reasons. We are incredibly emotionally addicted to struggle. And there's a lot of people that are facing that right now. And I think the way through it is to just take a big, deep breath and go, I'm really uncomfortable and this isn't working. I need to be shown a different way. And then to get quiet within themselves and listen.
Well, and I think that's it's such an American thing too, is like this, like, the narrative of triumphalism and,
Yeah.
progress at all costs. And so like sitting with failure, because this isn't failure sort of in a sense of, that anyone's done anything wrong. But I think that there is that fear that like, if I don't keep these plates spinning, it's failure, and it's not, and so I think that's part of the thing that people are having trouble letting go of, is realizing that, rest and taking your foot off the gas pedal a little bit. It feels like failure, like all of our programming is telling us that it's failure, but
True.
it's not,
But the screaming of the programming inside yourself cannot be underscored enough. It's weird. When you're stepping out of programming, which is my main job, is to help people deprogram from all of this stuff and to find what their truth really is. When you're doing that, it's almost like this is a well-worn path. It's a train going down a track at 70 miles an hour. To learn how to slow that train down, build a new track, and then move that train in that direction takes some time. But in the interim, on a mental health level, I really understand it is screaming at you, because that's your predominant programming. That's what brains do. They give you that sort of like 1 2 1 2 1 2. They're meant to do that. To break rank and to go in a different direction takes some strength. It really does. And in whatever way you can find that within yourself, dear listener, do it. Because on the other side of it, and I think, you, Allison, this as well as I do, on the other side of it is so much more space.
And that's what I think people are so, like, they want so deeply, and feel guilty for wanting it. It's like, and especially like I'm thinking of like all of my mom friends who are just like completely trying to hold down the fort, and just wanting space, and then feeling like you're not allowed to have it, or that it's impossible to get or something, when it's really just on the other side of the internal protest.
It really is. And now being around children, it's pretty easy to be like, hey, I need some space, and I want you guys to go do X, Y, or Z, or keep yourself busy, and just let me have an hour or half an hour to just be with my thoughts. I need to meditate right now. I need to work on my wellness. And I think it's women's ability to actually say that, or folks, people's ability to say that to their family members in a productive way that allows for the example. Our kids are looking at us. They're going, how do we handle these situations? If you're running around like a chicken with your head cut off trying to keep it all together, you're still in that same programming. They're not getting an education right now as to how you handle yourself well. And I know that in our culture, it's like, well, that's how you handle yourself well, is by, just continuing to do whatever. And people really want to defend their emotional addictions to these programs. And also, sexism, racism, capitalism, all the isms, of course, are structures that we want to fall down. On an ideological level, they need to go. They are beyond crusty and stinky, and they need to be out. But that doesn't take into account our somatics. Our somatics have been in a supremacy structure. They've been in a hierarchy structure. They've been in a capitalist, never-ending growth structure. So to halt that, it takes a lot of internal strength and a willingness to do something differently. And that is tough. It is legitimately tough. But there is nothing else to do. And if you want more time, more space, more awareness, more happiness, more joy, more ease, more flow, then you're going to have to give up what isn't giving you that. And look at the people around you, especially with that feminine programming that you were talking about with kids and stuff, and just be like, I have a whole community around me that's willing to help me and to be with me around this. We take everything on by ourselves. That's that post-war individual, everybody gets their own thing, everybody gets their own house, 2 cars, 2 this, 2 that, It's just, we've stopped being a community, and I think that that's something that's changing now. We have to look at our neighbors as people who are supporting a community around us, and who are these people, and how can we begin to serve each other so that we don't have to do this alone. Parenting is not something you're supposed to be doing alone. It's just not. It's just, for that example alone, it's crazy. You need a community. Otherwise, we have these like burnt out parents and disconnected dads and frantic moms, and or whoever, whatever gender dynamic that is, whoever's running those programmings through their body, it's not working. And if you're running structures, this is something I've been saying in every way I can to people. If you are running the old structures that are falling apart through your space, you are very uncomfortable right now. If you know how to let that go and create space so that a new model can land in you, you're feeling hopeful, fascinated, kind of excited, chilling. So it's the ability to let go of the addiction and the energy that runs through us of these structures so that we can make space for the new, more innovative thing to come through us. Because we can't have that big aha moment if we're like, I have 6 kids to do, and I need to do this, and I need to do that, and I need to, it's not going to come through. Creativity doesn't come through in those times. That's just a doing mode. And that's what's been wrong with our culture the whole time.
Well, and I've been seeing, people saying, and very, very rightly and very optimistically, like, well, like once we all, get our rest in, then we're going to have a revolution and the world is going to be different after this. And I think there are definitely the seeds of that being planted, but like that, I don't know, some of the ways that I'm seeing some of that being discussed is just like another sort of spiritual bypassing. Like, oh yes, of course. Then after we all take a good nap for a couple months, then suddenly capitalism is going to crumble. And it's like, well, probably not. And also, like, what's the interim stage? Like we're in that like larval dissolution, where we're in the cocoon and it's a mess. It's a mushy mess before things transform.
Well, I think everybody would agree that we've been in that. You know what I mean? Like we are in that right now, and we have been for a long time. That was the gift of the Trump revolution here.
Sure.
We're really getting to see that that's real. We're in a revolution right now. And part of the revolution is deprogramming from the ways in which we put our energy into the world, and we're trying to do it differently. Now en masse, people are having to do it differently. They're having to face this stuff. So you talked about earlier the way that being an empath, this might be relieving. It certainly has been for me. I've been awake as I don't know what you want to call it. Some people call it a starseed. Some people call it just a fully awakened person. Since I was a baby, since I was a child, I remember having very advanced thoughts about the world and what was going on here and what was a problem and where my parents were stuck and where society was. And I felt a weight on my shoulders as a healer. I mean, I became a professional healer at 15. So this has been all I have ever done, is help my own humanity and the humanity of people around me detox off of this stuff that doesn't work and find our own truths and our own uniqueness and our unity and diversity. Like that has been my lifelong project. So to see people take it on and start to do it's like unyoking the empaths of the world, because the awakening process or these truths, it's not like if you don't allow yourself to feel the shit in your space, the person down the street who's a psychic and an empath will. So for those of us who have been so aware of this, but the rest of the world is walking around like their head's not on fire, and we've all been like, okay, I guess we'll all act like we're trying to be normal too, and it's not working. Now when people are having to social distance and be very present with who's around them and pull their energy in and face their shit in a way that they were distracting themselves before, is like, I cannot tell you the amount of weight that came off of my shoulders when this all occurred. It's like I can breathe. because finally people are in their own spaces. They're not bleeding out everywhere. They're not unconscious. They're not bumping into you in the grocery store. They're aware. They're present with who's around them. They're present with their own energy and the energy that's coming into or out of them. And I am living for it. I hope we never go back to sloppy, unaware kind of interactions with each other. I really hope we stay aware in that way. And I know I'm not the only one who feels like this, because all my empath friends that I talk to and empath people that I have connection with through my work are all saying the same thing. It's yes, it's a lot. Yes, it's intense to have a whole global community going through this, but it's a lot less intense than when 2/3 of the population just like couldn't see themselves and refused to feel anything other than, I'm going to keep going because I want the next iPhone, you know?
And part of that too, I'm curious about this, people who are afraid, that when there is fear floating around, and sort of the discernment of what is actually my fear and like what is fear that's trying to be put on me as a form of control, and just taking the space, of allowing, of like you were saying before, like honoring, that this is hard and this is weird and things are changing in a way that are uncomfortable, and letting that be okay without confusing those feelings for panic that's being communicated to us in trying to like keep us on some sort of straight and narrow path,
Yeah. I think, with social media, it's like adding fuel to a fire. And I tell everybody this, like, just be careful what you share on social media. Make it something that you can handle the space around or that you've healed around, because as soon as you share it, it's like it is pouring fuel onto the fire. When you put other people's hearts and minds and energies and thoughts and feelings into your own personal process or what you're experiencing in the world, that can be a beautiful connection, or it can be really intense. And so disconnecting from the social strata right now more globally and reconnecting more locally, I think is a good idea in order to like manage that fear level. I also depart from a lot of quote unquote spiritual folks right now that are saying, don't give in to the fear, don't feed the fear. What the fuck are you talking about? This is an unprecedented thing that has never happened in our culture. You need to allow people to feel how they feel. And this is just another one of those ways in which humans really just don't understand how to let themselves feel feelings. As a Cancerian empathic person, I just look at people like they have 16 heads. I'm like, what are you talking about? Fear is what allows you to put enough stockpile of food so that your family could eat for a month. You should have already had that, Fear is what allows you to be like, you know what? I don't want to be nearer to that person. Let me get back in my own space. And this is, so you can look at it from one perspective that it's like disconnecting us, but I don't think so. I think it's connecting that person to real feelings that are going on in their space. And once you say, hey, you're allowed to feel this, whether it be hatred or fear or fill in the blank with whatever negative emotion that no one's ever allowed to feel because we're supposed to be happy all the time, or like balanced and totally productive. That's not real. That's not how humans work. That's not how moods and emotions work. That's not how a healing process works. You have to be able to feel fear. And in feeling it, you can be like, oh, this is okay. So this is mine. This is what my body's telling me, that I need to make sure I have 17 rolls extra of toilet paper or this feels really amped up, and this feels like I've been watching too much news and I need to just disconnect. And I trust humanity because I see people ahaing around this all of the time. They're finding what fear is theirs and what they should be doing with it, and what fear is a global thing that's a little bit too much for their nervous system, and they're letting that go and reconnecting to their families and reconnecting to themselves, and they're getting it. I almost have nothing to say about this whole thing because they're getting it. I'm like, okay, cool, we got it, let's go.
Yeah, because I think that, I mean, another way of saying everything you just said is like the shadow work is unavoidable. It's like it's in our faces right now. And so, yeah, I think the trick is just sort of like, not the trick, I mean, that's a bad word, but like just reminding people that it's not, that you can have time interfacing with your shadow without being run over by it. Because I think that's another fear too, that especially with the isolation and not having as many distractions, that it can be really easy to feel like, oh my God, like everything that I've been suppressing is coming up and now I'm going to get run over by it.
Yeah.
And you might,
Yeah, you might. It takes about I could talk about this forever. Now we're on the roll. Okay, so it takes about 2 to 20 minutes to feel your feeling all the way through. The reason why feelings get stuck is because of what we were just describing. If you cannot allow yourself to feel it, if there is judgment about whatever it is that's coming up in you, you will have a really hard time getting through it. And that's when it goes on forever and ever and ever. You suppressed it. That's why it feels like it's going to hit you like a Mack truck. If you just sit down with some tea, stare out the window, and be like, come on, self-loathing, come on out. The ability that people have to be with themselves is much greater than they think it is. And here's how you strengthen that muscle. Your consciousness, your awareness is the spirit guide to your human experience. You won't see me talking about spirit guides. I have nothing to say about spirit guides because to me, it's just you in another form. You are the all that is. Every voice that comes up in you, everything about you, anything that goes on internally with you, whether it be thought forms, sensations and emotions, whatever it is. If you can sit and observe them and just say, thank you. Thank you for trusting me with that truth of yours. Thank you for telling me that this is where your energy is going. Thank you for letting me know that you're scared. I'm here, I'm listening. Without trying to change it, without trying to do anything but listen, there's a huge amount of healing that happens if you can figure out how to do that and if you practice that on a daily basis. I have a meditation on my website for free called 5 Minutes of Presence, where I break this down entirely. The first part of it is just breathing. The middle part of it is just listening like this and being like, thank you. I hear you. I love you. I got you. I'm listening. Whatever it is, it's learning how to be a good friend to yourself. And then the latter part of it is learning how to clear out clairvoyantly. It's a really good exercise in terms of moving energy. But people can't move out of things because they can't be with them. If you can just actually learn how to have that inner authority voice, that higher voice, that parental voice, that loving voice, which almost none of us got mirrored in the world. I've never met a person who has a healthy relationship to this that hasn't had to build this strength. So we got to build it now. That's how you do it. You listen to yourself. Anything that comes up, you just go, thank you. I hear you. You don't have to even be loving about it. You can just be like, thank you. I see you. But you have to respect what it is that's going on inside of you, or it will own you.
Thank you so much for like laying that out, because I think that people think that, dancing with your dark side or however you want to term it, that it's this really intense, abstruse, esoteric process. And it's not. I mean, just the presence it seems so like it's not going to work. It's so simple, but that's sort of what the revolution is, really, is like realizing that it's simple and it's just a matter of sitting with it.
It really is. It moves. It takes 2 to 20 minutes. That is science. That's not something I'm making up. That's neuroscience. To be with something all the way through. And it now that aspect of you considers you a friend. Now it doesn't need to hyper project into the people around you and to fuck up your relationships. Now it doesn't hyper project into these places in your life that now become sigils of this energy because you won't just be with it. And sadly, it's the simplest tool in the world. It is the most transformational thing in the world. I'm so mad that we never knew this. I think that we should get taught this as kindergartners, first grade, second grade. We just need to actually practice this and it will work.
Well, that being said, where can people come and practice this with you?
So I'm at Erin the Psychic Witch on all social media and as a .com. You will see lots of stories, lots of tools being offered, lots of content for you to understand me and my process of being psychic and where I'm coming from as a person. And if I vibe with you, then I'm a good asset for people to have. And you can do one-on-one stuff with me. Right now, I'm launching a class called Essential Psychic Skills, which go over the spiritual anatomy. So really understanding chakras and the aura and why it's important and what info is in there. And then the basic psychic tools. So grounding, shadow work, running cosmic energy, which is basically connecting to spirit, learning how to create and destroy energy in your mind so that you can move quicker than being empathic about it, and then learning how to be autonomous in setting the tone. And then there's a bonus class for learning how to work with a psychic womb. And there are men in the class, there are non-binary folks in the class, but we are going to be doing the womb through the lens of more of that neutral space rather than it being a femme space. It's more of a creative space. So even folks who don't have a connection to their womb or don't even have a physical womb, we're still going to be working with that creative energy. And that starts on 4/20.
Yes. Well, I just have to say to the people that I'm taking this class with Erin because she's a brilliant teacher, and I've known you for a number of years, and I've worked with you a bunch of times, and I just it never fails that I just grow so substantially when I am in space with you, because you're so genius at the way that you've set up the way that you teach this stuff. So I'm so excited, and want everyone who's listening who feels a vibe about this, come join, because it's going to be outstanding.
Yeah, even if psychic stuff just doesn't vibe with you, or it's not your work, or it's not whatever, this is not for you to be trained as a psychic. It's for you to have access to yourself. So everything we've been talking about today is absolutely going to be included in that class. And the reason that you feel that way about me is because of what we just talked about. People feel safe in my containers because I do this work with myself, because I sit with myself, because I'm a safe space for me. I can be a safe space for other people to do this work in a very non-hierarchical, very linear, very hand-holding, very committed type of way. I'm a different sort of teacher than a lot of people, especially with online classes. You normally just get an email and that's that on that. I am not like that. These classes are live. I know your name. I know what's going on in your life. You have access to me full time. It's not a simple online course, because the work I do is not simple at all. It's very unique. It's very important that everybody gets that individual healing. And so I keep my classes pretty small because of that.
Well, and also, we had sort of talked about this a little bit before, but, just highlighting, as you just said, that it's non-hierarchical. So if people have wounding around sort of spiritual authority, that's definitively not what you're about, which again is part of the healing that's just provided from the first minute.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's one of my favorite things about the way that I work, is that I'm your sister, I'm your friend. I am a person who is a professional and trained to do this work, so I can hold space as a professional. But this is really space for you to explore you, and you will see that I'm the number one student of it as well, and I'm right there alongside of you, learning, growing, changing, and evolving. And that's why I offer this work. It's not to exact my ideologies onto people. It's to explore together and to grow together and to know more people. I always say my students become my collaborators. They become my friends. They become people in a community with me that I want to know what they're up to. I want to champion their work. I want to, have more people as friends and community members rather than followers and students.
Brilliant. I love it. Thank you so much for going through all this together with me today, Erin. This was so healing and just grounding and like hopeful. Like,
I have a lot of hope for what's going on. I feel very excited. I feel like I just want to hug everybody who's really going through it right now, and I want to get some practical internal information out so that people can work on themselves during this time and not get too stuck. I don't want people to get stuck. That's why I'm out here. So if you guys need any help and you need that extra hope, you can find me online.
And I will be sure to put all of your links in my show notes so that people can go to my blog and they can click and have easy access if they're not near a pen right now and can't scribble it down.
No problem. I love it.
Awesome. Well, thank you again.
Thank you.
So, if this kind of healing work is your jam, or even if it's not your jam, but you find yourself interested in dipping your toe into these kinds of waters, now is the perfect chance to do some work with Erin in her Essential Psychic Skills class, which kicks off on Monday, April 20th at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. You can sign up for that class or find out more about Erin's other amazing offerings at erinthepsychicwitch.com. You can also follow Erin on Instagram or Facebook as Erin the Psychic Witch for amazing truth bombs that go well beyond the usual predictable stuff that most wellness or spiritual gurus post on social media. I honestly can't recommend her work enough. You can find links to all this over on my website, queenofpeaches.com. Thank you so much for listening. I wish you the very best of physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health. Bye for now.